Brothers of the Serpent podcast, second hour. And we're going to dive back into Hidden History of the Human Race, which is the abridged version of Forbidden Archaeology by Michael-cremo and Richard Thompson. And let's see, I don't remember which part this is going to be, maybe part 8. But last time we were talking, we finished off, we had the Watcher in studio with us, and we finished off talking about the additional femurs that were found at the Pithecanthropus dig in Java by Dubois. And his suggestion that Pithecanthropus erectus had been dismembered by a crocodile, which explained why the femur and the skull cap
and
were so
they
far.
did actually find crocodiles bones in the cave. We were like, were there? Did he mention crocodiles? And he did.
Yeah. So, let's see. This is, if for those of you following along, this is page 156 of the Kindle version. Are the trinal femurs modern human? In 1973, M.H. Day and T.I. Mollison concluded that the gross anatomy, radiological anatomy, and microscopical anatomy of the trinal femora does not distinguish them significantly from modern human femora. In other words, the femurs found by Dubois and team et al. Are indistinguishable from Homo sape femurs. They also said that Homo erectus femurs from China and Africa are anatomically similar to each other and distinct from those of Trinal. In 1984, Richard Leakey and other scientists discovered an almost complete skeleton of Homo erectus in Kenya. Examining the leg bones, these scientists found that the femurs differed substantially from those of modern human beings. About the Java discoveries, the scientists stated, "From Trinal, Indonesia, there are several fragmentary and one complete but pathological femora. Despite the fact that it was these specimens that led to the species name, Pithecanthropus erectus, there are doubts as to whether they are Homo erectus, with the most recent consensus being that they are probably not." In summary, modern researchers say the trinal femurs are not like those of Homo erectus, but are instead of like those of modern Homo sapiens. What is to be made of these revelations? The Java thigh bones have traditionally been taken as evidence of an ape man called Homo erectus, existing around 800,000 years ago in the Middle Pleistocene. Now it appears we can accept them as evidence for anatomically modern humans existing 800,000 years ago. Some might have said that the femurs were mixed in from higher levels. Of course, if one insists that the human-like trinal femurs were mixed in from higher levels, then why not the Pithecanthropus skull as well? That would eliminate entirely the original Java man find, long advertised as solid proof of human evolution. Indeed, late in his life, Eugene Dubois himself concluded that the skull cap of his beloved Pithecanthropus belonged to a large gibbon, an ape not thought by evolutionists to be closely related to humans. But the heretofore skeptical scientific community was not about to say goodbye to Java man, for by this time Pithecanthropus was firmly entrenched in the ancestry of modern Homo sapiens. Dubois' denials were dismissed as the whims of a cantankerous old man.
Cantankerous. New favorite word.
If anything, the scientific community wanted to remove any remaining doubts about the nature and authenticity of Java man. This, it was hoped, would fortify the whole concept of Darwinian evolution, from which human evolution was the most highly publicized and controversial aspect. Visitors to museums around the world still find models of the trinal skull cap and femur portrayed as belonging to the same Middle Pleistocene Homo erectus individual. In 1984, the much advertised Ancestors exhibit at the Museum of Natural History in New York brought together from around the world the major fossil evidence for human evolution, including prominently displayed casts of the trinal skull cap and femur. All right. Next section is the Heidelberg jaw. In addition to Dubois' Java man discoveries, further evidence relating to human evolution turned up in the form of the Heidelberg jaw. On October 21st, 1907, Daniel Hartmann, a workman at a sand pit at Mauer near Heidelberg in Germany, discovered a large jawbone at the bottom of the excavation at a depth of 82 feet. The workmen were on the lookout for bones, and many other non-human fossils had already been found there and turned over to the geology department at the nearby University of Heidelberg. The workmen then brought the jaw over to J. Rush, the owner of the pit, who sent a message to Dr. Otto Schoensack. For 20 long years, you have sought some trace of early man in my pit, and yesterday we found it. A lower jaw belonging to early man has been found on the floor of the pit and in very good state of preservation.
So wait, Schoensack was collecting bones from a pit?
That's right. From J. Rush. Professor Schoensack designated the creature Homo heidelbergensis, dating it using the accompanying fossils to the Gunz-Mindel interglacial period. So again, you have this dating using other fossils. Mm-hmm. And the dating using the other fossils is also based on the idea of Darwinian evolution. It's a bit circular. Mm-hmm. I don't know. In 1972, David Piltdown said the Heidelberg jaw appears to date from the Mindel glaciation, and its age is somewhere between 250 and 450,000 years. According to Frank E. Poirer, in 1977, the teeth in the Heidelberg jaw are closer in size to those of modern Homo sapiens than those of the Asian Homo erectus, Java man, and Beijing man. T.W. Finnis of Michigan State University wrote in 1972 that the teeth are remarkably like those of modern man in almost every respect, including size and cusp patterns. Modern opinion thus confirms Rank, who wrote in 1922, the teeth are typically human. Another European fossil generally attributed to Homo erectus is an occipital fragment from a Middle Pleistocene site in Hungary. The morphology of this fragment, occipital, is even more puzzling than that of the Heidelberg jaw. David Piltdown wrote in 1972, the occipital bone does not resemble that of H. erectus or even archaic man, but instead that of earliest modern man. Such forms are dated elsewhere as no older than 100,000 years. Piltdown believed this occipital bone to be approximately the same age as the Heidelberg jaw, between 250,000 and 450,000 years old. If this occipital is modern in form, it helps confirm the genuineness of anatomically modern human skeletal remains of similar age found in England at Ipswich and Galley Hill. Returning to the Heidelberg jaw, we note that the circumstances of discovery were less than perfect. If an anatomically modern human jaw had been found by a workman in the same sand pit, it would have been subjected to merciless criticism and judged recent. After all, no scientists were present at the moment of discovery. But the Heidelberg jaw, because it fits, however imperfectly, within the bounds of evolutionary expectations, it has been granted a dispensation. So yeah, again and again, you see this with these, the bones that fit the models undergo far less scrutiny and are sometimes, sometimes the problems are like outlined, but people just kind of squish them in anyway. Mm-hmm. Further Java Man discoveries by von Koenigswald. In 1929, another ancient human ancestor was discovered, this time in China. Eventually, scientists would group Java Man, Heidelberg Man, and Beijing Man together as examples of Homo erectus, a direct ancestor of Homo sapiens. But initially, the common features and evolutionary status of the Indonesian, Chinese, and German fossils were not obvious, and paleoanthropologists felt it particularly necessary to clarify the status of Java Man. In 1930, Gustav Heinrich Ralph von Koenigswald of the Geological Survey of the Netherlands East Indies was dispatched to Java. In his book, Meeting Prehistoric Man, von Koenigswald wrote, despite the discovery of Beijing Man, it remained necessary to find further Pithecanthropus fossils sufficiently complete to prove the human character of this disputed fossil. Von Koenigswald arrived in Java in January of 1931. In August of that same year, one of his colleagues found some hominid fossils on the river Solo. Von Koenigswald classified the Solo specimens as a Javanese variety of Neanderthal, appearing later in time than Pithecanthropus. Gradually, the history of human ancestors in Java seemed to be clearing up, but more work was needed. In 1934, von Koenigswald journeyed to Sangirán, a site west of Trinil on the Solo River. He took with him several Javanese workers, including his trained collector, Atma, who also served as von Koenigswald as his cook and laundryman in the field. Von Koenigswald wrote, "There was great rejoicing over our arrival. The men gathered all the jaws and teeth they could lay hands on and offered to sell them to us. Even the women and girls, who are generally so retiring, took part. When one considers that most of the finds attributed to von Koenigswald were actually made by local villagers or native collectors who were paid by the piece, the scene described cannot but cause some degree of uneasiness." At the end of 1935, in the midst of the worldwide economic depression, von Koenigswald, his position at the Geological Survey in Java was terminated. Undeterred, he kept his servant and others working at Sangirán, financing their activities with contributions from his wife and colleagues in Java. Uncovered during this period was what appeared to be the fossilized right half of the upper jaw of an adult Pithecanthropus erectus. An examination of many reports by von Koenigswald has failed to turn up any description by him of exactly how this specimen was found. But in 1975, the British researcher K.P. Oakley and his associates stated that the fossil was found in 1936 on the surface of exposed lake deposits in central Java by collectors employed by von Koenigswald. Because the jaw was found on the surface, its exact age is uncertain. During the difficult year of 1936, in the course of which the fossil jaw discussed above was uncovered, the unemployed von Koenigswald received a remarkable visitor, Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, whom von Koenigswald himself had invited to come and inspect his discoveries in Java. De Chardin, a world-famous archaeologist and Jesuit priest, had been working in Beijing, where he had participated in the Beijing Man excavations.
What?
I told you. This is where I started getting the why are these Jesuits appearing in weird places? During his visit to Java, Teilhard de Chardin advised von Koenigswald to write to John C. Merriam, the president of the Carnegie Institution. Von Koenigswald did so, informing Merriam that he was on the verge of making important new Pithecanthropus finds. Merriam responded positively to von Koenigswald's letter, inviting him to come to Philadelphia in March of 1937 to attend the Symposium on Early Man, sponsored by the Carnegie Institution. There, von Koenigswald joined many of the world's leading scientists working in the field of human prehistory. One of the central purposes of the meeting was to form an executive committee for the Carnegie Institution's financing of paleoanthropological research. Suddenly, the impoverished von Koenigswald found himself appointed a research associate of the Carnegie Institution and in possession of a large budget. Considering the critical role played by private foundations in the financing of research in human evolution, it might be valuable at this point to further consider the motives of the foundations and their executives. The Carnegie Institution and John C. Merriam provide an excellent case study. In Chapter 10, we will examine the Rockefeller Foundation's role in financing the excavation of Beijing Man. But the Carnegie Institution was founded in January 1902 in Washington, D.C., and a revised charter approved by Congress became effective in 1904. The institution was governed by a board of 24 trustees with an executive committee meeting throughout the year and was organized into 12 departments of scientific investigation, including experimental evolution. The institution also funded the Mount Wilson Observatory, where the first systematic research leading to the idea that we live in an expanding universe was conducted. Thus, the Carnegie Institution was actively involved in two areas, namely evolution and the Big Bang universe, that lie at the heart